Advaita Gadatar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just 1 second. Hare Krishna. So we are in the reading fourth canto, third chapter. Sati expressed her desire to attend her father's sacrifice. Lord Shiva has been advising Sati not to go there. Lord Shiva gave several reasons. Lord Shiva also told Sati that why he did not get up to show respect to Daksha, because Lord Shiva told that at that time he was in the state of samadhi, being completely absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Lord, and how the state of samadhi was not within his control. Sattvam vishuddham vasudeva shabditam yadiyate tatra puman apavritah sattve cha tasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Yadokshajo me namasa vidiyate. This is the verse which we discussed last time. Lord Shiva told that I was actually situated in the state of Vasudeva, Shuddha Sattva. I was always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness, in which the Supreme Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead known as Vasudeva is revealed without any covering. Yadiyate tatra puman apavritah. In that state, I was actually absorbed in offering obeisances and meditating on the Supreme Lord. Therefore, I did not notice when your father Daksha entered that assembly. And this is the verse we discussed last time. We'll continue from the 24th shloka. Lord Shiva is concluding his instructions. तत्ते निरीक्ष्यो न पितापि देहकृत्
तत्ते निरीक्ष्यो न पितापि देहकृद
दक्षो ममद्विट् तदनुव्रताश्च ये
दक्षो मम द्वित् तदनुव्रतास्तश्च ये
यो विश्वसृग्यज्ञगतं वरोरुमा
यो विश्वस्कृयज्ञगतं वरो माम्
अनागसं दुर्वचसा करोतिरः
अनागसं दुर्वच्चा सा करोति तिरः. Translation. Therefore you should not see your father, although he is the giver of your body, because he and his followers are envious of me. Because of his envy, O most worshipful one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent.
So here Lord Shiva is telling that finally, Tat therefore na nirikshyo pita api dehakrit, although he may be your father, and dehakrit, although he has only given you the body, dehakrit, but still na nirikshyo, don't go to see your father, and you should not see his followers also. tad anuvrataschaye. And that Daksho Mamadvit, he actually considers me as his enemy. And Vishwasrip Yajnagatam Varorumam. In that sacrifice in which the creators of the universe were present, at that time, Anagasam Durvachasa Akarotiraha. Although there was no mistake on my part, although I was innocent, Durvachasa Akarotiraha. He scolded me with very harsh words. So therefore, do not go to that sacrifice to meet your father and his followers. And this is what Lord Shiva is categorically mentioning. So here Prabhupada writes here, yeah, for a woman, both husband and father are equally worshipable. Husband is protecting the wife during her youthful life, whereas the father is her protector during her childhood. Therefore, both are worshipable, both are protecting her at different stages of her life. But the father is called as a Deha Krit. The father is the one who gave her the body. In that sense, father is special. But Lord Shiva is remaining Sati. But although he may be a Deha Krit, he is the giver of your body. But then, because of your connection with me, he will not actually respect you. He will actually insult you. And especially when you feel insult from a very near and dear one, it will be very painful for you. And which that Lord Shiva clarifies in the next shloka. Yadi vrajishyas atihaya madvacho
यदि व्रजिष्यस्य तिहाय मध्वचो
badham bhavathya na tato bhavishyati.
भद्रं भवत्या न ततो भविष्यति
Sambhavitasya स्वजनात् पराभवो
संभावितस्य स्वजनात् पराभवो
यदा स सद्यो मरणाय कल्पते.
यदा स सद्यो मरणाय कल्पते. If, in spite of this instruction, you decide to go, neglecting my words, the future will not be good for you, O most respectable. And when you are insulted by your relative, this insult will immediately be equal to
So here equal to death.
equal
Yadi
to death.
vrajishyasi atihaya madvacho. If you ignore my words, atihaya, ignoring my words, if you go to the sacrifice, badramna, you will not have good fortune. And sambhavitasya, the same word which Krishna used in the second chapter of the Gita. Sambhavitasya chakirtir maranad atirichyate. For a honored person, dishonor is worse than death. And here Krishna, the Lord Shiva is adding one more thing. Sambhavitasya swajanat. For a respected person, and when he is humiliated by a relative, swajanat parabhavo. So at that time, the humiliation will immediately result in the death. Sadhyo maranaya kalpate. Immediately it will result in death. So Lord Shiva is clearly warning Sati. Actually. So, but despite the warning, at this time, what is the situation of Sati? That is how the fourth chapter begins. Maitreya Uvacha.
Bol, bol.
मैत्रेय उवाच
एतावदुक्त्वा विरराम शङ्कर
एतावद्भुक्त्वा विरराम शङ्कर
पत्यङ्गनाशं ह्युभयत्र चिन्तयन्
पत्यङ्गनाशं हुभयत्र चिन्तयन्
सुहृद् दिदृक्षुः परिशङ्किता बभान्
दिदृक्ष परिशङ्क्ति शङ्किता भवान्
निष्क्रामति निर्विशति द्विदाससा
निष्कामति निर्विशति द्विदाशश.
Yeah.
The sage Maitreya said, Lord Shiva was silent after speaking to Sati, seeing her between decisions. Sati was very much anxious to see her relatives at her father's house, but at the same time, she was afraid of Lord Shiva's warning. Her mind unsettled, she moved in and out of the room as a swing moves this way and that.
So after saying this, Lord Shiva was actually understanding in his mind. He was thinking that if I prevent Sati from going there, then Sati, because Sati, then also Sati would be destroyed. Sati would undergo great suffering. If I prevent her forcibly, you cannot go there, because Lord Shiva gave verbal instructions. Lord Shiva was thinking that if I prevent her physically, then Sati would be greatly angry or she would be destroyed. And if she goes there also, she would be destroyed or she would feel great insult. So both ways Lord Shiva could understand, because Sati at this point still she is not convinced of Lord Shiva's arguments. Therefore Lord Shiva could understand, if I prevent her physically from going there, then also she would feel very bad. And if she goes there, then also bad consequences will come. So understanding that, Lord Shiva became silent. But Sati was caught between her desire to go and see the relatives and the sisters and her father's place. That desire was there on one side. On another side, there was the fear of disobeying the instruction of Lord Shiva. So Sati was caught between these two emotions. Desire to see her relatives and fear of disobeying Lord Shiva. So when the desire to see the relatives would become prominent, she would come out of the house. And the fear of disobeying Lord Shiva would become prominent, she would come inside the house. In this way, she was coming outside the house, and she was going inside the house. She was going back and forth. Her mind was oscillating like a pendulum from one end to another end. So this is a very actually relevant scenario for every one of us. The scenario can be different situation for everybody. So Sati's desire to see her relatives, it was coming from the bodily platform. And the fear of disobeying the instructions of Lord Shiva. The fear of, like, there are good instructions which come from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So oftentimes in different situations in our life, on one side certain desires from the bodily concept, certain bestial desires, can be any desire. It can vary from situation to situation. Certain lower desires, certain desires from the bodily platform pull a person in a certain direction. At the same time, we receive certain instructions either from the Shastra or from some devotees, some gurus or sadhus or some superiors. They give certain instructions how one should not do that. At the same time, we are pulled by certain desires from the bodily platform. So that is the actually time of our test. That is the testing time. That which side how we are going to make our choice. So everyone faces this kind of situation. Sometimes we make a mistake, and then after experiencing the consequences of the mistake, then we realize, oh, I should have listened to that particular advice. I should have followed that. So here Sati is caught between two equal forces: desire to see her relatives versus fear of Lord Shiva. So, for example, suppose a simple scenario. Suppose, say, there is a yatra taken by devotees or Radhanath Maharaj or something like that. At the same time, there are other people, friends or other relatives. They are pulling him in another direction. So at that time, we are caught between two forces: go for the yatra, to go for this, or like this is a simple this one. But someday there can be other things also. At every stage, it's not only at a young age, even in a old age also. Even in the old age, because these forces of Kama and Krodha, they act even in the old age till the point of death. Shaknoti eva yakashodam prak sharira vimokshanat kama krodot bhavam vegam sayukta sasuki narah. Krishna says that one has to tolerate the Kama and Krodha till the point of death. So they pull a person in particular direction, and then at the same time there are the spiritual instruction. They are actually coming from higher sources, from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So oftentimes we are actually we are in this conflict. There is a beautiful shloka which I read from Subhashita Nevi. Subhashita Nevi is a book written by Vedanta Desika. In that, there is a one second. That Subhashita Nevi, the Vedanta Desika says that Bahu Vidadat Upakaran Guptva Duritam Prakashayati Tejah Suhrudi Vihita Hitamatir Yanna Pratipakaroti Natat. So he talks about the nature of a fool, or a person who lacks the Viveka Buddhi. So we have a true friend. A person has a true friend. What is the nature of a true friend? The nature of a true friend is that he helps one by telling what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing. And the nature of a good friend also tells in a very sensitive way. When the friend is going in the wrong direction, he tells in a confidential way, in an appropriate way, not insulting in front of the public. And the friend actually tells him, oh, this is a wrong choice. If you make this choice, this will be the consequences. And he tries to prevent the friend from making the wrong choice. A friend does, a guru does, and the super soul also does. The super soul also, oftentimes when we are caught up in a certain situation, super soul also gives indications in our heart. Oh, this choice is wrong. the choice is wrong, Super Soul gives the indication. And the Guru and the friends, other fellow devotees, others, they actually give in a very sensitive way at the right moment. They tell, oh, this is the wrong choice, this is the right choice, they tell. But still, but a foolish person does not recognize that person as the friend, does not recognize the true friend. A foolish person does not recognize the sincere well-wisher, devotee or a guru, and he does not recognize that super soul. And such a person is a fool. Such a person is a aviveki. That is the that's what Vedanta Desika is saying here. And in fact, Pingala also, she actually speaks a similar verse. Pingala says that Santam Samipe Ramanam Ratipradam Vittapradam Nityam Imam Vihaya Akama Kamdukka Bayadishokam Moha Pradam Tuchyam Agam Bhajenya. So Pingala says that the super soul is very close to me and very near to me and dear to me. And still I neglected the super soul. And I was looking always for relationship with other people. I'm such a fool that I gave up the service of that person who is eternally there in my heart and who is most dear to me. But that most dear one is the Lord of the universe and who is the bestower of real love and happiness, the source of all prosperity. And although he is in my heart, I completely neglected him. Instead, I have ignorantly served insignificant men who can never satisfy my real desires and who have simply brought me unhappiness, fear, anxiety, lamentation, and illusion. And she says that I uselessly tortured my own soul. I sold my body to lusty, greedy men who are themselves objects of pity. So in this way, I practice the most abominable profession of a prostitute and I hope to get money and sex pleasure. Similarly here, the sense oftentimes we neglect we fail to recognize our real well-wisher, our fellow devotee or our father, mother, or the spiritual master or a Shiksha Guru. So yesterday I was speaking to one devotee, not going into the details of the incident, but he told about how somebody was involved in certain relationship which was actually against the principles of Dharma. And when it was brought to notice how some very senior devotees, they had so many number of very patient counseling Zoom calls and speaking to that devotee, how that particular relation outside the boundaries of Dharma, how it will, what effect it will have. Very senior devotees, they gave very repeated counseling, very patient, mature counseling, but still it did not register on that person like that the devotee was sharing. So oftentimes, so therefore, certain desires are there, and there is a fear of disobeying, fear of disobeying the Shastra, the Guru, or the Sadhus. So these things are in conflict. So we have certain desires. Yeah, certain desire. All of us have certain desires. We are not pure devotees, but we have certain desires. But those desires also have to be fulfilled within certain boundaries. we are given certain boundaries to fulfill those desires. And those boundaries are given by the principles of Dharma. And when we cross those boundaries, when we cross the boundaries to fulfill those desires, then what will happen? What will be the consequences? That is what this episode is demonstrating. So Sati is actually pulled by the desire to go to the parents' place, and she is also warned by the Lord Shiva why she should not go there. She is caught up in this conflict, and then she chooses to go to the father's place. And what happens there? The consequences of disobeying the superiors, or the sadhu, or the shastra, the guru, what will happen? That is what we'll see here. So next shloka. Suhrud didriksha pratigat durmana
Dridviksha Pratighat Durmana
sneha trudatyashrukalati vihvala
Neha Drudratyat Shrukalati Vivala
bhavam bhavanya pratipurusham rusha
Van Bhavanya Pratipurusham Rusha
pradakshyati vaikshata jata vepatuhu.
Shati Vaikshata Jata Vepathu. Translation. Sati felt very sorry at being forbidden to go see her relatives at her father's house, and due to affection for them, tears fell from her eyes. Shaking and very much afflicted, she looked at her uncommon husband, Lord Shiva, as if she were going to blast him with her vision.
So here, because Sati's desire to go to her father's place was very prominent. Her body was shaking. Sati was crying out of affection. Snehat rudati. And Ashru kala ati vihvala. She was agitated with the tears. And she felt that Lord Shiva is putting an obstacle to see her relatives. Suhrut didriksha pratigata durmana. And therefore, she glanced at Lord Shiva with great anger. Rusha pradakshat ati vaikshata, as if to burn him to ashes. That was the anger she had. It's not that she is burning, but she glanced at Lord Shiva with great anger. So Krishna says that Jyayato Vishayan Pumsa Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamo Kamat Krodo Vijayate Krodat Bhavati Sammoha Sammoha Smriti Vibhramaha Smriti Bramshat Buddhinasho Buddhinashat Pranachyati. So when we talk about Kama, Kama is not only between the attraction between male and female. Kama is any desire on the bodily platform. So when that Kama becomes very strong, then after a certain stage, how much ever advice you may give to that person, it will not register in the mind of the person. How much ever advice you may give, it will not register. Therefore, like just like in a quicksand, suppose when a person has fallen in the quicksand, the only stage in which a person can come out of the quicksand on one's own is very first instance. The very first instance when he realizes, so this may be a quicksand, at that instant he can come out on his own. But once he has fallen, he cannot come out on his own. And he can come out only with the help of others. But even when somebody is helping, if he is doubting that person, then that is a great tragedy actually. So here, especially when a person's anger or attachment is beyond a certain level, how much our instruction, although it may be obvious that the person is doing a mistake, but it will not register because the mind is infatuated with something. Actually, mind is infatuated. That's why I mentioned that person who was having some relation outside the boundaries of dharma. One was given counseling repeatedly, but it somehow did not register only. So, for example, in the Bhagavatam, what is the reason that although we may hear the good instruction, but still we are not able to hear? That is because of the anchor of attachment is not removed. The 10th canto, when the cowherd boys came and begged for some foodstuffs for Krishna and Balram from the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices. The Brahmanas heard that. Itite Bhagavat Yachyam Shrinvantopi na Sushrubuhu Shudrasha Bhuri Karmano Balisha Vriddhamanina. The Brahmanas heard the supplication from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet they refused to pay heed to that request because Kshudrasha Bhuri Karmano, they were full of petty desires and entangled in elaborate rituals. So therefore, they did not pay attention to that. And Lord Shiva is also, although he gave good instructions to Sati, but he is not physically trying to prevent her. Some people, we can give good instructions, but when you put a physical block, especially for a person beyond a certain age, children at a certain age, we can physically actually prevent them. Sometimes we can physically say beat them, give punishment, that may be possible. But when they go beyond a certain age, when we give physically try to prevent, then that will be it will be even more bad. So Lord Shiva did not physically try to prevent her. So Sati decides to go to the father's place. That is described in the 3rd shloka. Tato vinishvasya sati vihayatam
विनिष्पस्य सती विहाय तम्
shokena roshena cha duyata krida
शोकेन रोषेण च दूयता हृदा
pitroragat straina vimuda dirgruhan
पित्रोरगातस्त्रैण विमूढतिर्ग्रहान्
premnatmano yordamadat satam priyah.
प्रेम्नात्मनायोरिदम् अदात् सतं प्रियः. Translation. Thereafter Sati left her husband, Lord Shiva, who had given her half his body due to affection. Breathing very heavily because of anger and bereavement, she went to the house of her father. This less intelligent act was due to her being a weak woman.
So Vinishvasya, breathing heavily, Shokena Roshena, with heart afflicted by grief and anger. And Sati, her intelligence bewildered by her womanly nature, left Shiva, who is actually Satam Priyaha, dear to the saintly, and Ardham Adat, who had given half of his body to Sati out of affection, Premnath Mano, but she went to the houses of her father. So here, of course, this verse and the purport Prabhupada talks about womanly nature. Womanly nature, first of all, one should not think that it is only for the women. This womanly nature is applicable both for the man and the women. The womanly nature, what Prabhupada is talking about here is that womanly nature is basically the the bodily conception. And the bodily conception acts both on the men and as well as the women. Even for a man also, the bodily conception acts, but the bodily conception pulls a person in a particular direction. But a good instruction coming from the guru, sadhus, or the parents, they actually pull in a different direction. But oftentimes that bodily conception or the womanly nature, because ultimately every jivatma is a woman, because jivatma is a prakriti, jiva prakriti, and prakriti is actually female by nature. So the womanly nature is a bodily concept which acts upon both on the men as well as the women. So the desire to see the father or her house relatives, that was stronger than the fear of her husband. So therefore, she gave up Shiva, and with a grieving heart, she went to the houses of her father. So Prabhupada also talks about how the result of Sati disobeying Lord Shiva because of her weakness. So Prabhupada says that such a weakness exists even in the, in other words, womanly weakness exists even in the relationship between husband and wife. In that way, Prabhupada is highlighting this point. And so we see several instances in the Shastra. Sometimes, so in this particular instance, Lord Shiva is giving the right advice, but Sati is overcome by the womanly nature, the bodily concept, and she does not obey the advice of Lord Shiva, and she goes to her parents' place. There are other stories in the Shastras. For example, when you see Tara and Vali. So Vali was actually overcome by the womanly nature, or the bodily concept, or the revenge towards Sugriva. Tara was advising Vali repeatedly that don't go there, because I heard that Ram is actually giving shelter to Sugriva. And it is your mistake that you are actually keeping Sugriva's wife. Tara was giving advice to Vali. Mandodari was constantly giving right advice to Ravana. So Ravana was overcome by the womanly nature. It means the bodily concept of life. He was infatuated with Kama towards Sita, and Mandodari was never supporting Ravana. She was always trying to bring her husband Ravana back to the path of Dharma. The word Patni, Patni means what? Patim Nayati iti Patnihi. That means one who brings the husband to the path of Dharma is called as Patni, or one who leads the husband to the path of Dharma is Patni. When the husband is following the path of Dharma, then the wife should give support, cooperation, provide assistance for him to follow the path of Dharma. And when the husband is deviating from the path of Dharma, the wife should remind the husband about the path of Dharma. That is the role of a wife. So here, so we see Shastras have both the stories. Sometimes here in this case, the husband is giving the good advice, but the Sati is disobeying Lord Shiva's advice. There are other stories, Ravana, Mandodari, Tara, Vali, where the Ravana or Vali, they refuse to listen to the good advice by their wives. Next, so when Sati decided to go, so Lord Shiva's followers also went along with Sati for protection of Sati. Tamanvagachan drutavikramam satim.
Tamanvagachan drutavikrama satim.
Ekam trinetranuchara sahasrashah.
Ekam trinetranuchara sahasrashah.
Saparshad Yaksha Maniman Madadaya.
Tapashadayaksha Maniman Madadaya.
Puro Vrishendrastarasagatavyata.
Puro Vrishendra Tarasa. The shloka went away.
Oh, sorry.
Puro Vrishendra Tarasa. Translation. Just 1 minute. मैं मोबाइल में पूरा नहीं आ रहा है translation.
Okay, I'll read, no problem. When they saw Sati leaving alone very rapidly, thousands of Shiva's disciples, headed by Maniman and Mother, quickly followed her, with his bull Nandi in front and accompanied by the Yakshas. So the followers of Shiva, understanding the desire of Shiva, so they naturally accompanied Sati. They did not, Lord Shiva did not even tell them, but they understood the mood of Lord Shiva, and then they also went along with Sati. And then now the next series of verses, it gives description of the parade and the sacrificial arena. So placing her on the bull, the Nandi also went, placing her on the bull, appearing splendid with a sarika bird, a ball, a mirror, a lotus, white umbrella, fan and garland, as well as accompaniment of songs with flute, conch and drums, they proceeded. So when big people, when the king or the queen, when they go on a parade, there's a whole procession. So many people go in the front and so many people come in the back also. So that is why, like for example, in the traditional festival, in any traditional temple, when there is a procession of the deities, many people will go in the front and many people will be in the back also. A few days back, a few weeks back, I was in Srirangam. So Srirangam, there are festivals almost throughout the year, 365 days. They published a big book only. They published a book in which 365 days, every day, throughout the year, what festival happens. Almost practically 360 out of 365 days, majority of the days, some festival or other is happening. So when I was saying one festival, one procession, there are so many people in the front and so many people in the back. So many people in the there was some group of people in the front who would be chanting the Divya Prabandha, and some group of Brahmanas in the back, they will be chanting the Vedic hymns like Purusha Sukta. Then apart from that, there are other people. So here, therefore, in this parade, Sati, along with Sati, many other associates of Lord Shiva went. And Sati entered the sacrificial arena. That is also described. And Sati entered the sacrificial arena. So many chanting of the Vedic hymns were going on. And there was different animals were supposed to be sacrificed in that sacrifice. They were also kept there. And many Brahma Rishis, Devatas, they were all attending that sacrifice. Many vessels made of clay, wood, iron, gold, and darba grass, they were kept there. So one may wonder, what about the sacrifice of the animals? So Prabhupada often says that sacrifice of the animals, those animals would be sacrificed, they would immediately get a human body. And they would immediately get a higher body. So that is how the sacrifice would be performed at that time. So some Prabhupada is saying that when the learned sages and the Brahmanas assembled to chant the Vedic mantras, some of them also engage in arguing about the conclusion of the scriptures. Some of the sages and Brahmanas were arguing and some of them were chanting the Vedic mantras. But even when they are arguing, it would be about the subject of the Vedic mantras only, subject of the sacrificial arena, not some unnecessary, some political gossip or something. It would be about a certain subject of what rules to be followed in what way or other. So in one sense, what we can see, whether some chanting of the Vedic hymns or some argument was going on, the whole atmosphere was surcharged with this Vedic sound vibration. And then Prabhupada says that the transcendental sound vibration is Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. In this age, no one is expected to be highly educated in the Vedic ways of understanding because people are very slow, lazy, and unfortunate. So therefore, Bhagavatam says that Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayer Ejantihi Sumedasaha. In this age, those who are having sharp intelligence, Sumedasaha, they will worship Bhagavan by the congregational chanting of the holy names. Gopi Pranantra, one place he says that, so those who are highly intelligent, they will worship the Lord by the process of Sankirtan. And those who are less intelligent, they will worship Bhagavan by other processes other than Sankirtan. And those who are really low intelligent, they will oppose the Sankirtan movement. So Sankirtan, it appears like a very simple process, chanting the same Maha Mantra. But other things like, for example, chanting certain Vedic hymns with the different swaras, Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita, chanting the Purusha Sukta, Shri Sukta, Rudram, Chamakam, or different other musical concert, which are very, they may appear more difficult. So it may appear that that is the more advanced process because it is more difficult. And Sankirtan of the holy names, it appears very simple and easy. Therefore, it may think that, oh, it may not be very high. It may not be the highest process. But actually, scripturally speaking, Yagyai Sankirtana Prayer Ejantihi Sumedasaha. Sumedasaha means those who are highly intelligent, they worship the Supreme Lord by performing Sankirtan. And then another thing Prabhupada says is that there were animals for the sacrifice. These animals were meant for the sacrifice. It does not mean that they were meant to be killed. So I already mentioned that. That just like, for example, nowadays to test a particular medicine, they use first to give the medicine to a particular animal. But of course, in that process, the animal may be harmed, the animal may get killed. But in the Vedic sacrifice, in order to test the efficacy of the mantra, animal would be used. But the animals would get a higher body. Animals which would be offered in the sacrifice, they will be rejuvenated, they will get a higher body. They were not meant to be killed and eaten. The real purpose of the sacrifice was not to replace a slaughterhouse, but to test a Vedic mantra by giving an animal new life. So animals were used to test the power of the Vedic mantras, not for meat. So Prabhupada is clarifying that because sometimes the people, there are people nowadays, they may use such verses in order to justify, or there is a license given for animal killing, or even in the Sanatan Dharma, like that, people use such verses. So when Sati went to the sacrificial arena, none of the people received her when she arrived. Tam agatam tatrana kaschanadriyat vimanitam yagyakruto bayajanaha rite swasruyat jananim cha sadara premashru kantya parisasvajur muda. Except for her mother and the sisters, nobody welcomed her, nobody received her. Why? Because of the fear of Daksha. So, but the mother and sisters, they embraced her in joy, but she was not respected by others. Others were all fearful of Daksha. So, 8th shloka, I will read 8th shloka. सौदर्य संप्रश्न समर्थ वार्तया
सौंदर्य संप्रश्न समर्थ वार्तया
मात्रा च मातृस्वश्रुभिश्च सादरम्
मात्रा च मातृस्वस्पिभिश्च सादरम्
दत्तां सपर्यां वरमासनं च सा
दत्तां सपर्यां वरमासनं च स
नादत्त पित्रा प्रतिनन्दिता सती
नादत्त पित्रा pratinandita sati. Translation. Although she was received by her sisters and mother, she did not reply to their words of reception. And although she was offered a seat and presents, she did not accept anything. For her father neither talked with her nor welcomed her by asking about her welfare.
So, because she was not welcomed by her father, she did not accept the seat. She did not accept other gifts and worship offered by her mother and sisters. The mother and sisters were offering, but she did not accept that because she was not being welcomed by her father. So she did not respond to the questions of the mother and sisters. She did not touch the seat because she was not welcomed by her father. So we see here that any relationship based on the material bodily consumption, how it is so, it's like a water on a lotus leaf, how it is so temporary that on a slight provocation, the intimacy of the relations can be terminated, especially the relation based on the material bodily consumption. But when the relationships are based on spiritual principles, even when there is a great provocation, the relationships are not terminated, but they go on. The highest example is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Jarikanda forest. The lion and the tiger and the deer, when they started chanting the holy names by the influence of Mahaprabhu, they were actually embracing each other. So, but here we see the material body, the relationship based on the material bodily consumption, how they can be terminated because of the slight provocation. And Sati also noticed that in the sacrifice there were no offering, there were no oblations were being offered to Lord Shiva, and she could see that Lord Shiva is being disrespected here. Lord Shiva is being disrespected here, and she became angry as if she would burn all the worlds. So that is described in the 9th shloka. So much so that she looked at her father as if she were going to burn him with her tears. So here Prabhupada says that so in the sacrifice they'll be chanting the mantra Agnaye Swaha, Indraya Swaha, like that. But she was noticing that Shivaya Swaha, they are not chanting that. And they were not offering oblations to Lord Shiva. So therefore, here Prabhupada is highlighting an important point. Sati was not angry because of herself, that she is not respected. Sati was angry because Shiva is not respected. So here Prabhupada is giving another angle in the purport. Prabhupada says that she was not sorry for herself. She was ready because she was ready to come to her father's house without being invited. But she wanted to see whether or not her husband was being respected. So if you see, there's a contrast in the purport here. Some purports before the previous chapter and in this chapter, we saw Prabhupada was giving the purport that how Sati's desire to see her relatives were more prominent than the fear of disobeying Lord Shiva. The bodily conception overpowered, so therefore Sati left to see her relatives. That is what we are discussing. And that was the same point was given by Prabhupada in the purport. But in this purport, in the 9th shloka purport, Prabhupada says that Sati wanted to see whether or not her husband was being respected. To see her relatives, her sisters and mother, was not so important. Even when she was received by her mother and sisters, she did not care, for she was most concerned that her husband was being insulted in the sacrifice. So when she marked that insult, that her husband is being insulted, then she became greatly angry. Then she looked at her father as if to burn him in the vision. She did not burn, but she looked at her father with a great anger. So here, Prabhupada is giving another aspect of Sati's personality. Sati's real concern was that she came there, because we will see in one of the later purports also it will come. She came there in order to, she was thinking that I should somehow solve this dispute between my father and husband. She came with that intention, or she came with the intention to explain the position of Lord Shiva. She wanted to somehow remove the misunderstanding. With that intention, she came. That is how Prabhupada writes in one of the purports. We'll see in the next week class. But on the other hand, Daksha was completely disrespecting Lord Shiva, and we will see in the next week what Sati will speak in that sacrifice. There are profound shlokas from the 11th shloka. There are some 10-12 shlokas she speaks, and then till 23rd shloka, 22nd, 23rd shloka. Sati will speak these shlokas, and with a great reverence towards Lord Shiva, because this is an important section. How when a Vaishnava is being insulted, how we should not tolerate that offense to a Vaishnava. That is the theme of this particular section, which we'll see in the next class. And also the profound character of Lord Shiva will also be shown, will be explained by Sati in the coming shlokas. So in this particular section, which we'll read, we will also see the character of Sati. So the previous section, by reading that, we may think that Sati was simply in the bodily concept of life. She was just influenced by her desire to see the relatives. So that point was mentioned by Prabhupada. That lesson we should take for ourselves, definitely. But in the next section, we will see Sati's quality as a Vaishnava. Sati's quality, how she did not tolerate the disrespect towards Lord Shiva, how she actually reacted to this particular instance. We'll see that in the next class. So I'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, comments, you can share.
Haribol. Prabhuji,
Hare Krishna.
next class we will start from shloka number 12.
10th shloka.
10th. Okay. Haribol.
Anybody wants to add any comment, anything?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Rahul.
You mentioned that, any desire on bodily platform kama. So does this include craving for food or say pani puri?
No. So that's why I mentioned that there are boundaries of dharma. Any desires are there, but any desires outside the boundaries of dharma.
Okay, got it.
So all of us have different desires, but especially when we try to fulfill a particular desire outside the boundaries of dharma, what will be the consequence?
Got
And
it.
that consequence is given by the Guru Sadhu Shastra.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Rao.
Krishna Das.
Dandavat Rao, yes, Rao.
Before we desire, we should know whether we deserve or not. Before we desire, we should know whether we deserve or not. Before that decision to desire, decision
See.
to be able to fulfill that or not. That is also. We may have desire.
Realistic actually. We cannot be over ambitious for something which we cannot which is out of our hand. Something realistic within the boundaries of dharma, and one can pursue that. But something unrealistic thing, when we try to put effort, then we may get frustrated.
From our point of view, Rupa Goswami said, no, whatever is favorable in relation to Lord, that type of desire is applicable. It is not favorable, you should not desire that. Okay.
Yeah, anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varchana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much for your patient attention. ग्रंथरा श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.